I was born from the corpse of my lynched mother underneath a hanging tree, where I was left to rot alone in a mire of her blood. A mercenary group led by a man named Gambino eventually happened upon the grisly sight, presuming me to be dead, but when I began to start wailing, to the surprise of the mercenaries, an acquaintance of Gambino's Shishu immediately came to my aid. Gambino allowed the woman to keep me for her own personal consolation, despite the circumstances of my birth being considered ominous by his cohorts. 3 years later, my surrogate mother contracted the plague and died. Under Gambino's tutelage, I began honing my swordsmanship at 6 years of age and joined the mercenaries band 3 years later at 9 years old, looking up to our leader as a father figure of sorts. On the night following my first skirmish, a mercenary named Donovan ambushed and violated me in my tent, revealing he bought me for a night from Gambino. In a following skirmish, I isolated Donovan and eliminated him, refusing to believe the man's claim from the previous night. When Gambino lost his leg in battle, his relationship with me immediately deteriorated. From verbal to physical abuse, I was subjected to various forms of degradation for 2 years following Gambino's injury before Gambino eventually made an attempt on my life. Possessed of the notion that I was the reason for his misfortune, Gambino revealed he did indeed sell me out to Donovan, voicing his disgust for my existence. Heavily disheartened by this revelation, I retaliated and killed him in self-defense, the closest thing to a father I had ever known. Consequently attacked by Gambino's men and branded a father killer, I fled with aggressors on my tail, eventually running into a dead end and being shot off a cliffside. From my high fall and a bout with a pack of wolves below, I fell unconscious, eventually being discovered by and enlisted as a child soldier in another mercenary band that happened upon me during the siege of a military garrison defended by the Band of the Falcon. I, now 15, joined the fray alongside a mercenary band and narrowly defeated an enemy leader named Bazuso, lowering the enemy's morale and allowing for the fort's capture. In my travels, I was attacked by several Band of the Falcon mercenaries seeking to claim my reward and exact revenge for my earlier interference. I easily dispatched most of them until I was met by Griffith, who quickly incapacitated me and had me brought to the band's encampment. Waking several days later, I was given by Griffith the option to join the band. I promptly refused, instead opting to challenge Griffith to a duel. I stipulated that the White Falcon could lay claim to me in the event of defeating me in combat. Harboring an interest in me, Griffith agreed and we engaged in battle, with the White Falcon ultimately defeating me and enlisting me as a member of the Band of the Falcon. During the night, Corcus and a few others attempted to kill me, only to be stopped by Casca. While I expressed my thanks, Casca shrugged me off. During a night raid with the band, my horse was killed and I was nearly attacked by the enemy until Griffith, Judo, and Pippin came to my rescue as the rest of the band members managed to drive off the enemy into a retreat. During our celebration for our victory, as I sat alone, I was dragged by Pippin to join the others, with Rickard and Judo welcoming my company. The next day, I had a chat with Judo on the nature of Griffith and the band before I was told by a member that Griffith was calling for me. I found Griffith showering and we engaged in a water fight. Once I noticed Griffith's necklace. He explained it was a beharit that he was given by an old fortune teller. Griffith then told me that I belonged to him. Griffith spoke about what my role in the world may be and what it means to be the true elite, as he mused on how I was the first person he talked to about these things. In 3 years' time, I, now 18, was promoted to the Band of the Falcon's Raiders captain, and for our efforts against the Black Ram Iron Lance Knights, the band was formally recruited by Midland in its century-spanning campaign against Tudor. At a later point, amid seizing a Tudor stronghold, the Band of the Falcon found itself at a standstill while making its final push into the fortress, with roughly 50 of my soldiers being slaughtered by a single enemy burrowed within the inner citadel. Fed up with these results, I ventured into the citadel myself, where I met the monstrous apostle Nosferatu Zod and engaged in battle with the demon. Initially taken aback by my opponent's overwhelming aura and daunted from parrying Zod's bone-rattling strikes, I ultimately gambled my life on one swing, and with it, landed a gashing blow on the apostle. Zod was only further excited by the injury, having after 300 years finally found a human capable of injuring him, and subsequently assumed his behemoth-released form. Petrified by Zod's transformation and completely outclassed, I was thrashed around and nearly crushed by the apostle before Griffith and Band of the Falcon reinforcements intervened. When Griffith came to my aid, Zod blocked our path of escape, forcing us to execute a pincer movement on the apostle, in which both of us dealt substantial damage to the demon. In retaliation, Zod tail whipped Griffith into a column, though he immediately ceased his onslaught upon sighting Griffith's crimson beherit. The beast left me with a prophecy, warning me of an inescapable death that shall befall me should Griffith's dream ever collapse, before flying off. During the autumn hunt in Wyndham after our return, the Band of the Falcon acted as the King of Midland's guard in place of General Julius' White Dragon Knights. In the midst of the hunt, Griffith was shot by a stray arrow, but avoided injury due to his beherit taking the brunt of the blow. On a night sometime after, Griffith, having deduced Julius as the culprit behind the assassination attempt, asked me to kill the general in retaliation. I invaded Julius' manor in the dark of night and swiftly eliminated my target. When the door to the general's room opened, I, assuming it to be a guard, pierced through in advance, killing Julius' son, Adonis. With the guards alerted, I battled my way off the premises and escaped through the Wyndham sewers, making my way to Primrose Hall, where Griffith was set to be in attendance. I rendezvoused first with Casca, and together we overheard Griffith giving his interpretation of a true friend to Princess Charlotte. With the conclusion of Griffith's monologue, I left the scene, vexed by the implication that I too, ultimately, was nothing more than an asset to the realization of Griffith's dream. The Band of the Falcon shortly after sets out to combat the Blue Whale Knights of Tudor. During the engagement, noticing the trouble Casca was having with an enemy commander, I intervened and did battle with the spearman Adon Koborowitz. Upon candidly defeating my opponent, I noticed a fainting Casca staggering off a cliff edge and broke her fall, before I was shot off my horse, and subsequently the cliff by a desperate Adon. The two of us free fell into the river current below, with me pulling us ashore and finding us shelter from the chill rain. Believing Casca to be feverish, which I soon realized was actually her menstruation cycle, I removed her drenched clothes and rewarmed her with my body heat while waiting out the rain. When the rain finally ceased, Casca woke and immediately attacked me, flustered by her womanly shortcomings as a soldier. Subduing and tiring her out, I asked why she became a mercenary to begin with, to which she explained the reason for her idolization of and devotion to the White Falcon as his sworn sword, as well as the jarring effect Griffith's desire for me had on her. Our conversation was interrupted by the movements of Tudor troops near our location. Realizing enemy forces would soon home in on the area, we decided to depart after sunset. In the midst of our escape, we were surrounded by a swarm of Adon's troops. Together we mounted a counter-offensive, with me eventually killing Adon's brother Samson. Acknowledging Casca's weakened condition, I decided to stay behind to buy time for her escape, telling my comrade to return to her metaphorical sword, Master Griffith. In an arduous battle, I was able to defeat all of the Tudor troops in the forest, single-handedly killing approximately 100 soldiers. After I was found and carried to a Band of the Falcon encampment, I revealed to Casca my admiration for her, Griffith, and the rest of the Band of the Falcon's commitment to realizing their collective dreams. Furthermore, I revealed I didn't feel my place was with their campfire of dreams, strongly alluding to my forthcoming departure from the band. With my injuries nearly completely healed, I assembled in front of the fortress of Doldry alongside the rest of the band, our goal recapturing the fortress for Midland. Griffith split the Band of the Falcon's forces into two, one group accompanying him and me to lure Tudor's forces toward a river, and the other an infiltration force led by Casca to retake Doldry itself. When the Band of the Falcon successfully lured the Purple Rhino Knights to the river, I engaged in a fierce duel with General Bosgon, in which my sword broke, worn from my previous 100-man slaughter. After I was put in peril with only a knife to wield, a large cleaver sword suddenly landed in front of me, which I used to behead both Bosgon and the general's horse. No sooner after Bosgon's defeat, the victory cries of Casca's unit roared on from inside a recaptured Doldry, as Band of the Falcon flags waved in celebration. With the loss of both their general and the fortress, the remaining Tudor forces scattered in defeat. The Band of the Falcon received a profusion of praise from Midland citizens and officials alike upon our triumphant return, and a victory ball was held in celebration. I attended the ball, in spite of my aversion to the aristocracy, to see the culmination of the band's achievements, but also in order to help Griffith enact a scheme to do away with political adversaries of the White Falcon. I served in tying loose ends of the ploy, killing all of Griffith's accomplices to avoid potential complications in the future. 1 month later, having aided tremendously in the Band of the Falcon's success, I finally set out to leave the band, unable to cling to Griffith's dream any longer. On the morning of my departure, Judeau, Corcus, and a frantic Casca intercepted me as I left Wyndham, with the latter two taking me to a tavern to query my reasoning. There, I revealed I wanted to attain a dream of my own and stand beside Griffith as a man of equal vision. After a fierce reprimand from Corcus and a solemn farewell from Judeau, the latter saw me off, before we were intercepted at the outer wall of the city by Griffith and several other band members. Griffith questioned if I truly intended to leave the band, to which I confirmed my intent. Rattled by this affirmation, Griffith drew his sword and demanded that I duel for my freedom as he did 3 years prior. Unmoved by this antagonism, I drew my sword and clashed with Griffith, breaking the White Falcon's blade in a single swing and leaving my former leader kneeling in defeat. On the night of my departure, at my campfire, I was met by a Skull Knight, who warned of an eclipse set to take place in a year's time, a torrent of madness, a tempest of death for which the human body could never atone before vanishing into the night. In search of a purpose of my own, I spent my time training in the mountains and frequenting the hut of a blacksmith named Godot. Roughly a year following my departure, now 19 years old, I entered a combat tournament hosted by a Midland noble and offered to fight a foreigner named Silat, proposing I would provide the tourney winner with better competition, to which the man accepted. Evading the rapid strikes of my opponent, I was able to overpower Silat with relative ease and win the bout. The amazed tournament host offered me a job while alluding to the Band of the Falcon's continued activity with Casca as their new leader, much to my surprise. On a night soon after, I was able to track down the band's location, intervening in an enemy raid on the band led by Silat, defeating the foreigner once again and forcing Silat and his forces to withdraw. I was met with open arms and notified of Griffith's capture and year-long imprisonment, the band's newfound status as enemies of Midland, Casca's terrific leadership, and the band's plan to break Griffith free. I was later taken away by Casca to a waterfall, where she expressed her anger for my decision to leave a year prior emotionally drained from her struggles as a falcon. She let herself fall off a cliffside in a suicide attempt, though I saved and embraced her, leading to the two of us making love. Following my return, a rescue team was formed to free Griffith, and in 3 days we infiltrated Wyndham through the sewers. With the aid of Princess Charlotte, we were able to make our way to the ancient Tower of Rebirth, where Griffith was said to be held. After a deep descent to the lowest prison cell beneath the tower, we were appalled at the sight of a crippled, flayed Griffith, a shell of his former self. Overcome with emotion, I hugged my fallen comrade, unaware of Griffith's feeble attempt to choke me, before mercilessly killing the tower jailer responsible for the White Falcon's ravaged state. Fighting our way through a wave of alerted soldiers, the rescue team was able to re-enter the sewers, thwart an ambush by Bakaraka assassins sent to kill Griffith, and escape Wyndham to a farm outside the city. En route to the Midland border, we realized we were being pursued by the dreaded Black Dog Knights. During the fight, I clashed with the Black Dog's apostle leader, Wild. Excited by his battle with me, Wild transformed into his monstrous released form. After a fierce engagement, I was able to best and temporarily incapacitate the beast. However, Wild rose again, grabbing a defenseless Griffith in retaliation and dealing a critical blow to the band's morale by revealing the full extent of the ravaged man's grievous injuries. The dying, desperate apostle demanded that Griffith summon the God Hand. But to his dismay, he observed that Griffith was no longer in possession of the Crimson Beherit, and so he resolved to kill the White Falcon. In an abrupt intervention, Zod tore Wild in two and then told Griffith that his Beherit would soon return to him before flying off. At the Midland border region, the remnant band members came to terms with the gravity of Griffith's injuries and discussed our futures. In a tender moment with Casca, she urged me to leave Griffith's side once again if I was to truly fit Griffith's interpretation of a friend. As the White Falcon described at Primrose Hall, without warning, Griffith, having mustered enough strength to commandeer his resting carriage, fled from the area, with us in pursuit. When Griffith wrecked the carriage and landed in a lake, we rushed to his location. As soon as I reached him, however, we were all whisked away to an alternate dimension by Griffith's returned Crimson Beherit. Numerous anthropomorphic beings welcomed us to the nocturnal feast they referred to as the Eclipse, much to my shock. 4 profound entities emerged from within the dimension afterward, introducing themselves as the God Hand and revealing the purpose of the Eclipse for Griffith to offer his comrades as sacrifices in order to join their divine ranks, as has been preordained. Proving to indeed be an inevitability, Griffith, having weighed his options as an invalid and reaffirmed his dream and ambition, offered his former comrades as sacrifices, therefore triggering the branding and unilateral slaughter of the band members. I fought relentlessly against the ravenous demons, bloodlusted by the merciless feasting on my friends. Eventually, I was restrained by one of the demons biting down on my left arm, as a bared Casca was summoned by a reborn Griffith rechristened Femto who proceeded to violate her. Even after severing my arm and managing to free myself, I was immediately pinned to the ground and forced to witness my lover's violation, all while the restraining demon slowly gouged my right eye. After Femto finished with Casca, the Skull Knight from a year ago breached the Eclipse, proceeding to retrieve us, evade Femto's space-distorting attacks, and escape the temporal junction with the 2 unconscious sacrifices in tow. Having been brought to Godot's cave, I woke 4 days later to the sight of a mentally regressed Casca. I immediately ran away to a moonlit valley, only to be met by specters attracted by my brand, and again by the Skull Knight, who informed me of my new life as a branded inhabitant of the interstice. I formally declared war on all of demonkind, hellbent on exacting revenge against my enemies, as the restless spirits began to flee soon after. The Skull Knight warned that the spirits had merely found another torch in the darkness to feast on, alluding to Casca's endangerment. We moved with haste toward her location, and upon arriving, witnessed a specter surrounded Casca, giving birth to our demon child, the infant having been tainted by Femto's violation of her, before it faded away into the astral world at sunrise. After roughly a month of training back at Godot's, I set my sights on combating demonkind, brandishing a new set of armor along with a cannon-equipped artificial arm in place of my severed left arm. I retained the enormous broadsword and embarked on a war against the Inhumans.